This episode of the Quad Squad Pod is sponsored by The Ballad of Bonaduke by R.T. Slaywood, a dark urban fantasy available exclusively on Kindle Vella. Visit our link tree or the description of this episode of the podcast for more information on how to begin reading today. Now let's start the show. We are finally back.
Finally.
After our hiatus. After Bryce is down in Oregon, possibly the size of a shallot to a red onion. Who knows? And quite frankly, until we see it on a necklace, I don't even think we care. Check
Still
the
want
merch
the
store.
guitar picks.
We had Bryce and his gallbladder removal surgery. Pauly and his wife Roxy went on a lovely vacation to 5 state parks. Did you say, or was it
three state parks?
3 state parks. So there, yeah. Pauly's feeling refreshed. Bryce is about 1.5 pounds lighter. Aaron's still ornery. We're good to go. So I think it's time we go ahead and and get into today's topic. We're super excited. This is by far the most prepared we've been for an episode.
This is definitely the first time we've recorded this, by the way.
Yeah, we have not tried this yet.
First fucking attempt.
This is absolutely the first try. But today we're gonna be covering everyone's favorite sci-fi movies. Everyone compiled a list of 5 movies. There are some rules here now. It's 5 unique movies for each of us. There were several movies that we were going back and forth on that more than one of us wanted, but we wanted a list of unique movies. So there are 5 movies from each of us, and the other rules that persist are all the movies have to be live action. Much to Bryce's chagrin, there's no Star Wars, there's no Star Trek, there's no Marvel, and there's no DC. So to recap, all live action, no Star Wars, Star Trek, Marvel, or DC. Everyone has unique movies. No 2 people or more could use the same one. So I'm going to go ahead and start us off. And I think rather than give you my full list, I'm just going to go one movie at a time. That'll make things more suspenseful. And to start us off, my first movie is Jurassic Park.
Excellent.
And directed by Steven Spielberg, one of the transcendent filmmakers of not only his generation, but I just think in American filmmaking. To start my notes off, the first thing I have listed is it's fucking dinosaurs, and I think it's a hard point to argue. The movie starting with the raptor transport, the screeches of the raptor. You don't get to see the full raptor. The guy getting pulled into the raptor cage. And then at this point in my notes, we get to where it says, seriously, though, it's fucking dinosaurs. So I just wanted to hit that point one more time. Dr. Grant telling a little boy about how the raptors hunt, and he has the claw, and he's like tracing the boy's stomach as he talks about how they'd use the claw to basically open up the stomach of whatever it was they were capturing. Was so good. That
Best
kid was
babysitter ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to find Dr. Grant babysitting my kids anytime soon. I think that's for sure.
That's where all the good bits are.
Jeff Goldblum is throwing 100 miles an hour in this entire movie. There's not a Jeff Goldblum.
What movie does he not throw 100 miles an hour?
This movie is still different, though. I think this is probably the most this movie just oozes Jeff Goldblum. And I kind of mean that in an uncomfortable way, but also you welcome it because of the way he looks with that shirt only buttoned up, 3-4 buttons by the time the movie's done. Not to mention Samuel L. Jackson as one of the park employees, and Wayne Knight, or as most people probably know him, Newman from Seinfeld, also as the park employees. Newman trying to smuggle embryos for a lot of these cryogenically engineered dinosaurs in the shaving cream cans. Doesn't end well for Newman. Spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen the movie.
But also the argument he has
it's-
with the guy where he's having lunch with him, he's like, look, hey guys, looks nobody
Dotson,
cares.
We got Dotson. Dotson's here.
Nobody cares.
Also, I think to be fair, we're going to spoil all these movies, and most of them are not that new. So
No.
deal with it. We don't want any. You spoiled Jurassic Park for me.
Yeah, that movie is like almost as old as
From
me.
here now, spoiler alerts for everything.
We'll put something in the description that says we're going to spoil these movies. So if you haven't seen Jurassic Park by now, 1, get out from under the rock you live under, and 2, deal with it. The one scene that still gives me crippling anxiety is the kids hiding from the raptors in the kitchen.
Mhm.
And it's all stainless steel. All the pots and pans are stainless steel. So everything is making noise. The kids are doing their best to be quiet, but they're terrified as small children between the ages of maybe 8 and 12 or 8 and 13, hiding from raptors. And what I put together in one of the last few times I watched the movie is Dr. Grant tells you how they hunt. And then you're watching that take place with all these raptors in the kitchen with those 2 kids, which was
More
really
suspenseful. It's more suspenseful than most horror films. Like that part right there, as a kid, fucking terrifying. Like so bad.
What was that?
I think that was you.
I'm just sitting here.
Somebody's computer was like, "This is the Quad Squad."
You guys didn't use the intro theme. Yeah, that's because we put that in post. All right, well, I guess
So wait,
in there.
none of us did that? That's amazing.
I think Aaron just doesn't want to admit that he did it.
No, I
He
wasn't
was
even
looking off screen.
Yeah, he was the one looking down, like doing things, I think.
I'm
And his little box was lit up, and I was the one who was supposed to be fucking talking.
well, I don't know why my phone would have done that because I'm on Google right now.
Listen, at least it wasn't the Pornhub theme, and we know if anything you're watching, it's other videos of us.
Hold,
so
please.
We appreciate it. I better not hear that intro.
These are the moments that we have this podcast for. Like, this is the
Aaron,
reason.
also, I think we also needed to clarify what type of sci-fi movies were eligible, just in case Aaron has some different editions potentially. No parodies that you may find on various websites.
Well, the only
18 and
porno
over.
ones I've seen have been like with Mystique or something like that. So we wouldn't be able to use it.
Oh,
anyway, so it's
Oh,
all
that's
good.
true. Okay, good.
China did one with where she was the She-Hulk, which was really, really not cool.
We're leaving this in also.
Did she?
Just so you know.
Yeah, here we are, just like
Aaron,
talking about
you can talk about your
references.
movies when we get to your turn. But this is my turn. Okay? Jesus Christ.
Hey,
None of us have
Aaron,
heard of that one.
Technically, it doesn't count as Marvel. So go ahead, let it fly.
Yeah.
He's marveling me with his memory at this moment. Okay, so back to Jurassic Park, and we'll get to Aaron's list later. So I watched the movies that made us on Netflix, and they have a Jurassic Park episode, and they had the idea to try to lean on the animatronic dinosaurs that they had built for the film as much as possible.
Mhm.
Now, this wasn't the first movie to use CGI, but it was the movie that is commonly referred to as the one that really brought it to prevalence in the manner in which they used it. So, like in the first few times they were using the animatronic T-Rex, it was supposed to rain in that scene. They were trying to make sure that the dinosaur, that the T-Rex didn't get wet because the outer layer of skin apparently was effectively a giant sponge. So by the time they were done filming the scenes and it had gotten wet and absorbed water, it weighed 3 or 4x what it did at first, making it unstable. It wasn't moving in the manner they wanted it to. So they started leaning into the CGI more. And with the first cuts they saw of the CGI T-Rex, they loved it. It got great reviews. Everybody had nothing but really great things to say about it. And it turns out that ending scene where the T-Rex is in the visitor center, where it's basically battling the raptors, it's got the banner coming down as it's roaring at the end. They only got that scene out there because the CGI went so well. Had it only been the animatronic T-Rex, that was not how the movie was supposed to end. So that really allowed Spielberg and the team to change the vision of really the entire movie, which I think is really interesting and a pretty incredible what if. Like that scene is so impactful for the course of the movie and really wraps it up where the T-Rex is kind of like
the good guy
of the movie.
Yeah.
It goes from eating the lawyer with his pants down in the hut, the straw hut. That's
Still a good guy.
Yeah.
Still a good guy.
Yeah, I mean, the lawyer was not the good guy. I think that's pretty clear. But yeah, that I thought that was super interesting and a really cool kind of what if moment, you know.
Well, yeah, like would it be the franchise it is if they would have gone all animatronic and like it not turned out as crisp as it did? Like it's crazy to think about that.
Well, and Spielberg too. There's all of that information out there about his experience with Jaws. The only reason the Jaws shark doesn't show up until the last third of the movie is because of the issues they had with the animatronic shark. It was supposed to be more prominently featured, and because it wasn't, it creates that suspense and that kind of in that genre that everybody followed. Like the opening scene with the Raptors where you don't see them right away. Like the whole suspense and the mystique of the shark in Jaws is that you never get to see it for the first 2/3 of the movie. You might get a fin, you might get it coming out of the water for a second, but you don't get to see the whole shark until much later. So you would think, if anything, this was kind of I wonder if he's having those deja vu moments with the animatronic T-Rex as it's waterlogged and they can't get it to do what they need it to do. So yeah, just super interesting. But I was like, I was probably 7 the first time I saw that movie. So I already love dinosaurs. I was fascinated by them. They used to have the little zoo books. I don't know if anybody else is familiar with those, but it was like one solid color on the border in zoo books. And they had, animals that are alive today. And then they had a dinosaur series. So it was like each month was a different dinosaur. So I always loved dinosaurs. Thought that was so cool. But then this movie kind of bringing it all to life. Unbelievable. So,
yeah.
Well, yeah, and still the scene of like them first getting to the park and driving up and then seeing the dinosaurs just roaming the field. It was just like, oh my God, they made it happen.
Yeah.
Like there's fucking dinosaurs. Yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
We have a T-Rex.
Yeah, and how many
the
years?
first one was where they had the one guy that worked with the park that eventually got like cornered by the Raptors, right? That was at the end of Jurassic Park 1, right? You know, where he's like clever fella or whatever, you know, like he turns his head.
Yeah.
One was
the guy who was with Dr. Sattler through like the middle part of the movie there. That's the guy who yells "shoot" at the beginning.
The
opening scene.
That scene fucking blew me away because from what you're talking about, how they kind of didn't show them, and they showed a little bit of them. They showed how they're more like predatory and everything, and then it showed exactly how they work. And he was like, "Clever girl," and then just
then that face just shows up and is in the coming from the side. That
fins, right? Yeah.
I just remembered the scene where she's like, "What are they doing with the goat? Like, why is the goat in there?" Like, it's lunch. No! That's what it is.
And the thing is, like that turned out it was the appetizer. Unfortunately for the lawyer.
I have a feeling that's not Andrew. I hope that's not something I'd say if I came to visit you at your house. What is he doing with the goat?
It's funny that you would say that to me in a more developed city, whereas you live in the middle of Wyoming. And I'm not saying you keep warm with a goat at night, but I'm also not really saying that either.
I'm also saying I'm not sure if you do or don't. You know, it's up in the air.
It seems probable.
That's why Aaron always gets oddly aroused anytime someone has the goat conversation about Tom Brady.
Fuck you, Andrew.
Okay. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so far we've got goats and Mystique from Pornhub. Okay,
yes.
Cool.
So don't forget
China She-Hulk.
Listen, when Aaron talks about his movies, he can talk about whatever he wants. But this is not the time to talk about Aaron's.
This is Andrew's time, okay?
Aaron's Mount Rushmore of his movies.
Oh my God, Andrew's time's going to be like the entire hour.
Well, yeah, because you won't stop talking about your porn preferences. Okay, I'm going to move on to my next movie then, so Aaron doesn't jump in.
Next.
Aaron's going to be disappointed it's not a movie where someone shows up delivering a large sausage pizza, but it's Independence Day. directed by Roland Emmerich. In my notes, the first thing I typed here was the Welcome to Earth quote by Will Smith. This movie blew my mind. Bill Pullman's speech gives me chills every time I hear it, even still. And I truly believe that this country would be in a much better place with President Thomas J. Whitmore at the helm. And that's Bill Pullman from this movie. The visual effects were stunning at the time. This was only a couple of years after Jurassic Park, but you could tell the CGI had already kind of grown leaps and bounds in those few years from Jurassic Park to Independence Day. The cast was loaded. You go from Will Smith. I realized I went back-to-back Jeff Goldblum features in my list there. That was not intentional, and everyone, unfortunately, will not be a Jeff Goldblum film. But
did you say everyone, unfortunately, will not be?
Yeah, it's probably going to disappoint the Jeff Goldblum heads who watch the podcast. So,
they just tuned out. They're
like, that's it. I'm gone.
They're done now.
We have. Sorry, my Siri. I'm just taking my watch out. Siri is a nosy woman. Bill Pullman, Randy Quaid, Judd Hirsch, Robert Loggia, Vivica A. Fox, Harvey Fierstein, and Harry Connick Jr., just to name a few. I'm leaving several off there, but there were so many people who played small to medium to large parts in this movie, and I feel like everybody was phenomenal. Watching the White House get blown up as a year-old was about as crazy as it got, and like just to even try to wrap my head around that and not really understanding special effects or CGI at all, because that was like 1996. You have no idea. You're like, did they really blow up the White House for this? Spoiler alert, they did not blow up the White House for this. It still stands. That Bill Pullman speech still would have gotten me to take a fighter jet up. I would have flown one right into the heart of that giant ship if I could. I have right here the specific part where he says, and should we win the day, the 4th of July will no longer be known as an American holiday, but the day the world declared in one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. We're going to live on. We're going to survive. Today we celebrate our Independence Day. And like, I'm even getting chills reading it, and I did it a complete injustice because I am no Bill Pullman. But it also meets an important requirement of mine for a good movie when they say the name of the movie in the movie. And they did that there. So that's obviously something that's important.
That is a weird requirement for a movie.
You're like Peter Griffin's like, they said the thing. They said the thing.
Face Off. They say Face Off in Face Off. Another
I want to take
classic.
his face off.
Also, in Face Off, the doctor performing that surgery is actively smoking a cigarette while John Travolta's face is just in a bowl of ice water right next to where he's smoking. Not very, really, I think, medically plausible.
Sanitary, yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, that was everything I have. I don't know if you guys remember the first time you saw that or what your thoughts were when you did.
Well, that was like the very first, I mean, like, okay, so Jurassic Park kind of started with CGI, but Independence Day was like, that's when they started taking CGI to the max, when it was most of the movie, you know what I mean? Yeah, it was back when Randy Quaid wasn't... Is it Randy Quaid?
Yeah, it's definitely Randy.
it's Randy.
Just like not super crazy, but actually played who he is now today.
Yeah.
But yeah, the star-studded cast, that was like one of the first movies that had a very star-studded cast. There was nothing. The fact that they tried to put a sequel to it sucks because the sequel sucked.
I didn't mind it.
Yeah,
I didn't mind it.
Canonically, it doesn't exist. We do not. It's its own thing. It is not.
I just like Bill Pullman being like an insane ex-president. I thought that was hysterical. So.
I mean, Independence Day for sure was like the epitome of a blockbuster. Like, it's just, it's insane. Like how big that movie was when it came out, and still holds up. Like graphically, like still looks incredible.
Yeah,
Well, to be fair, the block at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue did get busted when they blew up the White House. So that
Jesus Christ. But yeah, it was. Now I forgot what I said because of Andrew's stupid fucking pun.
No, that's just your short-term memory with your age is so bad that I think you forgot.
You tried so hard, Aaron. You tried.
I'm going to move on.
It's all Aaron's fault.
Just go on to your next one. On.
Yeah, and then when you come back to your next favorite Pornhub movie, I'm sure you'll interrupt with it anyways. Third on my list.
Just say it.
Third on my list, and there's this could be a movie Aaron might find on that one website we just mentioned. It's called Snowpiercer.
I have actually never watched this movie.
I haven't either. It's phenomenal. You both need to. So, directed by Bong Joon-ho, who more people probably know him for Parasite, which he won Best Director for, and it won Best Picture as well. Parasite is an unbelievable film as well. That's a movie for another episode of the podcast, though. I just went to the IMDb summary because I was like, how do I put this into one sentence? And I couldn't do it. So
Impossible.
IMDb summarizes this by saying, in a future where a failed climate change experiment has killed all life except for the survivors who boarded the Snowpiercer, which is a train that constantly is traveling the globe, a new class system emerges. So speaking of movies that have really strong casts, you have Chris Evans, Tilda Swinton, John Hurt, Octavia Spencer, Allison Pill, I think it's Soon Kang-ho, and I may be mispronouncing that, so I'm sorry if I am, and many others. So each part of the train is for each respective section of the class system. So the farther back you get on the train is in theory the lower class of people, or the lowest class in the tail. That's where Chris Evans and many of these people are. So Chris Evans plays Curtis, and you get to watch Curtis and many others attempt a revolution within the Snowpiercer. So as they're quite literally working their way up from the tail one car at a time. And they basically need to figure out how they're going to do that. And they need help from other people who are in other cars who they have their ways of communicating with secretly by passing things around one way or another.
And real quick, Andrew, what you're talking about, the class system, I don't think most people understand. Like in the back, it's like you sleep in bunkers, and it's almost like prison. And then in the next one, it's a little bit better. The next one, they're serving sushi. Then there's a classroom, and then there's like a dance club, and it just gets higher and higher up in like the hierarchy of like how society would work, but in a much smaller version.
Yeah, it's like the
Titanic,
and it's quite literally
the Titanic.
And then from there, so I put, if we fast forward it and we come to find out, Wilford, who I believe is actually Ed Harris, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. Another monster of the industry.
Invites a great villain in any role where he plays a villain. Excuse me there. Ed Harris's character, Wilford, invites Curtis inside once they get there, up towards the front, that Wilford actually planned the entire revolution himself. Because Wilford wants Curtis and whoever's aiding him to help eliminate 3/4 of everyone in the tail of the train, to basically save the ecosystem within the train. They're coming to realize there's too many people. They don't have enough resources to take care of everyone who's in there. So he wants Chris Evans and everyone working with him to basically rid the train of 3/4 of the people towards the back. So there's a struggle that ensues. There's plans for explosions and detonations. Chris Evans, I think it's his arm. He loses his arm in a fight to try to help save Timmy, who is one of the children. Towards the end, there is an explosion that takes place. And in doing so, the noise from that triggers an avalanche. So the avalanche happens, the train is derailed, and apparently there are only 2 survivors that we see. There could have been more, but the way the movie ends is Timmy, the boy that Chris Evans's character fought to save, and then Yona, another character, emerge from the train wreck to see a polar bear. And that's kind of how the movie ends. So that
living out in the frozen tundra,
There was life out there outside the train, despite that experiment that went horribly wrong. And it's just one of those movies where it gives you so much to think about. And after the movie's done, and Parasite was the same way. I think it's a lot to do with his style. After the movie was done, you're almost reflecting on so much that the movie brings up and the movie is kind of talking about. And it's really engaging, and it's just really interesting to think about. But they also had a TV show. I've never watched it, and I will not ever watch it because the movie was fantastic, and I don't want to spoil it.
And the photography of that movie is just outstanding. Having just like one long cylindrical sort of like thing to actually move around a camera and actually have like full shots, and then the one time like the train is like going around a corner and both sides can like see each other, you know, the back of the train and the front of the train. It's really just phenomenal.
I mean, even that thought, the only remnants of society are contained in basically a big sardine can, and they've been segregated by who's the haves and who's the have-nots. Yeah. And it's a really interesting story. You guys both definitely, I think, would enjoy the movie. I know Bryce probably feels the same way, but
I do. It's difficult to watch sometimes. I mean, like if you're not like totally prepared for it, you can be like, oh geez, I'm gonna have to take a break. Like it's one of those movies. But like there's some realizations towards the end when he was talking about meeting with Wilford or everything, where some things come to light, and it really kind of just crushes everybody's preconceived notions as to what they were going to do with this like sort of like revolution and everything, and how do I do this, and should I do this, and stuff like that. It's really great. And Ed Harris, like you said, he's so good.
He is a great bad guy.
Yeah, and like he's in pajamas eating like a filet mignon, and like the front. He's like, this is great, by the way, in case you want to do this. It's fantastic.
It's so good. All right, yeah. So there was Snowpiercer. My last two are more recent. I kind of worked chronologically. I realized.
When was Snowpiercer out? When did Snowpiercer come out?
I think it was okay. So just over 10 years. Now on to my fourth movie here, directed by the Christopher Nolan, is Inception. This is one of my favorite movies ever. I started my notes off with dreams inside dreams inside dreams. I feel like Nolan has this foundational formula, and it basically boils down to Michael Caine and some combination of Cillian Murphy, Tom Hardy, and or Joseph Gordon-Levitt with a Hans Zimmer score. And right there, you're better than most 75-80% of movies out there. So
off to a good start.
Yeah, you really it's hard to go wrong with that base formula. This movie also has Leonardo DiCaprio, Ken Watanabe, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, as I mentioned, Marion Cotillard, Elliot Page, Tom Hardy, Cillian Murphy, Michael Caine, Tom Berenger. Just not only is Nolan so talented, but you know, he gets this unbelievable cast, because who doesn't want to work with Christopher Nolan? But just star-studded cast. The premise of the movie is Cobb, who is played by Leonardo DiCaprio, is tasked by one of the leaders in the global energy space, and they keep it kind of vague, but is tasked by Ken Watanabe's character to help him use Inception to plant the idea to dissolve his competitor's empire. I got lost in my notes there. To plant the idea to dissolve his competitor's empire into the mind of his son, as his father, who was the CEO and founder, laid on his deathbed. So Cobb and his team work in what's called extraction in the movie. If you're trying to gather information or secrets or whatever it may be, to go in and do that from people is what they're skilled at and what they're typically recruited to do. Now, Inception is something completely different. Inception is known to everyone in the movie almost exclusively as a myth. Like, it's a theory, and in theory it can be done, but the odds of being able to do that and plant an idea is much more difficult than just retrieving information, because you have to not only plant an idea, it needs to form in the manner in which you want it to form. So, things to note, as you get into these dream states, time goes by slower. So what is 5 minutes on that first dream level is maybe 2 hours. And the farther you go down, the more and more that time expands. So you could be spending 10 minutes on the third level of that dream state, and it could be 3 months in the real world. So these are all things that various characters are learning throughout. The cinematography is impeccable, but again, that is kind of a thing that Nolan and his team is known for in all of his films. It's something he takes very seriously. The score, again, it's Hans Zimmer, who is almost always throwing a perfect game. Rarely are you ever watching, which I feel like it would also be kind of stupid to be like, Hans Zimmer's really off his game here, as Hans Zimmer's house is just littered with Academy Awards for best score.
It's not his best stuff, you know.
Yeah, that's when you're watching Top Chef and you're like, I can't believe you left that in the oven for 2 minutes too long, you idiot. As I'm eating Kraft mac and cheese for dinner. But
it's a perfection, though. Let's be real.
That is true. Perfect mixture of the powder and butter and 2% milk. That's all I have in the fridge. Yep. One of the scenes that always stands out for me, and I think is so cool, is that rotating hallway, the fight scene with Joseph Gordon-Levitt and some of those henchmen. They built a rotating hallway. That is not just camera trickery. They built a rotating hallway. Joseph Gordon-Levitt and the stuntmen had to train in that hallway to be able to do that. But that is all practical in the sense that they built that hallway in a way where they can just get it going left or right or whichever way they want to for those desired effects. But that's what I want in a movie. Visually stunning. The score tells a story on its own. If you keep your eyes closed, you have a pretty good idea of what's about to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's either super suspenseful, it's sad, it's the energy's ramping up, whatever it may be. Tom Hardy, I love Tom Hardy in this movie. Also, he's got a bunch of great lines as Eames. But I don't really know what's wrong with. I mean, obviously, there's no real science behind this. It's not something that you can go order on Amazon, but everything about this movie just works, and it works so well, and everybody is working at such a high level that it's tough to beat. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I hate that movie. I fucking hate it. It is a mind fuck, and for somebody with unmedicated ADHD, it starts making you dizzy trying to watch it.
Oh my god!
I'm not saying it's not a great movie. I'm saying I hate that movie.
There's nothing that explains Aaron and my relationship than me spending 3 minutes explaining why I love a movie so much, and his only response is, I hate that movie. Thank you.
Perfect.
Lovely.
And you know what?
Shit on that movie.
No, I'm not shitting on the movie.
We have to see that there's growth here, because he didn't shit on you. He just said he hated the movie. He wasn't like, you're stupid for liking that movie. So this is a moment for Aaron. We should be applauding him.
I'm not saying it's not a great movie. I mean, it was obviously a great movie. I hated that fucking movie. The end scene where the top just keeps spinning, I still have fucking anxiety over that.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair.
And people wonder why this works.
With me talking. I was just gonna say it's better than when I was talking about Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, because holy fuck, that was a different Aaron right there.
We're gonna need to do an episode just breaking down that conversation.
Yeah, fuck that movie.
I think.
Like I wonder if like that's the only movie that he hates that we're all gonna mention, or there's gonna be like 3 or 4 more, because I think we need that, Aaron. Like regardless of whether or not you do hate them, I think you should just go ahead and a couple of times just be like, stupid movie.
Computer.
Fuck you,
all
Andrew.
this thinking and stuff.
There it is.
Got another one. There weren't enough horses in the desert for me. I hated that film.
As a matter of fact, there wasn't any desert at all. It's terrible.
You kids and your talkies.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Encraption, more like it.
So, my fifth and final movie on my list is the most recent of all of them. It's directed by the marvelous Jordan Peele, and it's Nope. I wasn't sure if all of his movies technically fell into this category, but Nope was the one I went with. And there's really just something special about his mind. I am fascinated by interviews where he's kind of explaining some concepts or giving what he's willing to give about movies and his thoughts on maybe the way it ends or what it means or the interpretation. Daniel Kaluuya, who was also in Get Out, which I just watched Get Out the other night, and still stands as great as it was then. But Daniel Kaluuya and Keke Palmer are amazing individually, but also together. They play siblings in the movie, and they have this rivalry, but also this chemistry as brother and sister that's very believable. And I think that's important and if you haven't seen the movie, just the way the dynamic is, and they lose their father so early on in the movie, that dynamic is kind of one of the linchpins of the entire story. And just the way that those two play off of each other is really great. Stephen Yeun, who's in there as well, is phenomenal in the role that he has. The cinematography, I know I just talked about that with Nolan, but Jordan Peele also has an incredible eye in his cinematography. Team does as well. Kaluuya's character, who's OJ, introduces the idea of a bad miracle towards the beginning of the movie. His father in the movie is killed when basically it starts raining like objects, just random objects. And I think it's either it's a coin of some kind, I believe, that ends up going through his dad's skull and killing him.
Jesus.
So he rushes him to the hospital, but it's the idea of a bad miracle. So that and that is kind of something that gets hit on also later on. And the theory is that something unbelievable is happening, but that something that's happening is not a good thing. Then there's the story, and this is Stephen Yeun's character, who's Jupe in the movie. The story of the TV show Gordy, that he was basically a child actor, and Gordy was a chimp that the family had for some reason. That was like the premise of the multicam live sitcom in front of the live studio audience. And it was an episode where it was supposed to be the chimp's birthday. There were balloons brought on set. And if you're not familiar with what balloons do when they get next to really hot things like a light on set, they explode. That explosion of the balloon happens, sends the chimp into a frenzy, and the chimp murders multiple cast members. And they close on one of the scenes of one of the girls who gets attacked by the chimp with her shoe standing up on the toe. So the toe is on the ground and the heel is standing straight up. And that's kind of how they close that scene. But it comes back to that idea of a bad miracle. That shoe, they basically, Kaluuya and his sister work with Stephen Yeun's character, who owns like a cattle ranch of sorts, but it's like an amusement park also. And he, as the child actor, is the face of it, and he drives people in. But he takes them into kind of a back room, and he has memorabilia from Gordy, and he explains this story, tells them about it. But just really, really suspenseful, terrifying. And I mean, the thought of being a child who's a mere few seconds away from being attacked by a rabid chimpanzee is pretty fucking terrifying, if you ask me. But the way that this movie is shot, there is a spaceship, or what you believe to be a spaceship. It turns out that is actually the alien being itself. It shapes itself like a spaceship, and it hides behind a cloud at all times. And what you come to find out is this cloud is actually just like, it's basically a way for it to hide. It's a way that it cloaks itself. And I'm doing it a bit of a disservice here, because there's so much there, and I could spend 40 minutes on my own just talking about
imagine
movie.
that.
If you haven't seen it, it's fuck off, Aaron. If you haven't, I don't have a tally for that. Sorry. If you haven't seen it, it's phenomenal. Angel, who's played by, I think it's Brandon Pereira, is great, and like a comedic element to kind of lighten things up at times. But unbelievably shot film that is beautiful. Interestingly enough, there's a lot of stuff that's done at night, and what I believe Peele said is because it would have been so much more expensive, because they were filming out in the desert on a horse ranch, that it would have cost so much more money to film at night and light it. So they would film, I believe, during the day for the night scenes, and they would artificially darken it. So just something interesting that I thought was pretty cool. But,
smart.
Jordan Peele is a genius.
Yeah.
And all of his movies, I'm a huge fan of.
He is a genius, but also fuck him for my name.
That seems like you're having some statements there.
Yeah.
And that was actually, to be fair, that was Keegan-Michael Key in that sketch.
Yeah, but yeah, it's still fucking both.
That statement is not endorsed.
I haven't seen that one.
Of the of the podcast in case either Key or Peel are watching. It's just Aaron that doesn't like you. You've never seen that one, Pauly?
I've not seen that one, but I've seen his other, and like Peel is, I mean, as a director is marvelous. Like the way he shoots is, I mean, it's so original, and his stories are just as original too. Like no one's ever done what he's done, which is hard to do nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for such a young creator to just take the movie industry by storm like he has there's some amazing talent.
Well, just his background beforehand, like coming from comedy with Key and Peele.
I don't think you would have seen him doing that sort of thing after Key and Peele. You're like,
not at all.
Okay. Impressive.
Yeah, that's a great point. Awesome. Well, that's my list, and I know.
Well, bravo, Andrew. That's fantastic.
Holy shit! Are we finally done?
Thank you. Take your iron supplement, you old fuck. All right. Anyways, now that we covered that, I think Pauly's up next.
Yeah, I think it is my turn. So mine are all mostly the 90s, except two of them. My latest one is 2005, so it's more the older ones. I haven't kept up on sci-fi as much with as many kids as I have, besides the Star Wars and stuff. And even then, I haven't had full mental capacity to endure them while the kids are running around, which is fine. But I don't have a particular order for mine either. I'll just kind of start where I start from. So the first one is backstory. My grandpa loved this book series, and my mom actually got him an original pressing with the signature of the author for his birthday one year. And ever since, like I started watching the British TV series first, which is so great because it goes so much more in depth than the movie does, because I forget how many books, but I think it's like 7 of them. But it's Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Love that one.
2005. The director is Garth Jennings. He's British. He mostly did music videos before this. Radiohead, Vampire Weekend, Beck, Fatboy Slim, Eels. Oh, wow. Like he did their music videos. And this was like his first movie that he ever did. Pretty impressive
credits for music videos, though. I mean, like.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're gonna be a music video guy that transfers into movies, those are some great music videos to work with artists for. So
not like Mick
the
G.
movie starts out. Right, Mick G. God.
Is that really the name you're gonna use?
Yeah, that's what you're going for.
Okay.
So the movie starts out with dolphins saying so long and thanks for all the fish as they jump from the ocean and head off into space, because the dolphins are in fact from a different planet entirely. They've just been here getting notes on how Earth goes. So yeah, the dolphins, as we have all expected this entire time, are actually not from this Earth. And they sing us a little song and just escape, because Earth is getting removed to make way for an intergalactic superhighway, which is fantastic. But no one on Earth was given notice except the dolphins, of course. It's a great cast. The cast is kind of a who's who of British actors, but there's also some really great American actors. Martin Freeman plays Arthur, the main guy. Sam Rockwell is Zaphoid. He is the intergalactic mayor or president of the galaxy. Zooey Deschanel from Aaron's favorite TV show, New Girl, is in there.
Fuck you, Pauly.
Wow. Bill Nye, which I fucking love Bill Nye so much. Like, I'm ignoring it. So yeah, Bill Nye, which is one of my favorite actors of Britain. Stephen Fry is in there. He's the guide, basically the narrator of it. Mos Def is in there before he changed his name. I forget now; it's escaping me. But Mos Def is in there. He is the friend of Arthur that is actually saves Arthur from the planet getting destroyed. And then my favorite of everyone, Alan Rickman, plays the robot that has feelings. Just absolutely fantastic. So, it's filled chock full of British humor, which I absolutely love. Like, it's just all across the board. The British humor that runs through it is fantastic. there's the probability drive on the spaceship, where when you click it, the most improbable thing that could ever happen does happen. So like in one moment they're trying to escape, they push the button, they all turn into yarn characters, and just it shows them as yarn characters, or they turn into a pot of flowers. Like, the most ridiculous things that could ever happen. It's just fantastic. But to end it, the answer is 42. For the answers of the universe, it's 42. I would go into more detail on that one, but there's so much involved. I do love Bill Nye as like the creator of the new planet Earth, as Arthur is trying to just get back home, because that's all he wants. And so he finally, gets to go back to where they're rebuilding Earth, because it was a mistake that they actually destroyed Earth to build this galactic highway. The highway was actually supposed to go over a couple thousand light years and not through Earth. So yeah, it's just a wonderful film. I love, graphically fantastic, but I love humor when it comes to sci-fi, and that is one of the tops for me when it comes to humor and sci-fi.
Yeah, I think what they do a great job of there is that the plot, if you think about it, is just a big critique for the commercialization of something. It's just another critique of capitalism when you think about it. Like, oh, let's just blow Earth up because it's in the way of our space highway. Like,
oh yeah.
But yeah, it's always good when they can throw that in there. But no, it is. I think you knocked this one out of the park. You hit on all the good stuff. So I'll throw it over to the other guys if they've got anything.
Yeah, it was just like, it was a silly movie. It almost reminded me of like Idiocracy, in a way, the way it was shot and the way, but it was, yeah. And then Andrew touched on how it's like, it turns capitalism into sci-fi, how we're just going to blow up everything on the way just to build our space highway. But yeah, that was a great movie.
I think so many movies do that sort of thing, especially when they're sci-fi. They kind of like mock capitalism,
absolutely,
like reasoning for doing anything they do, and like, I mean, like even Star Wars and stuff like that. When people argue Rebels and Empire and stuff like that, they're often taking the wrong side because they don't understand how capitalism is like destroying everything. So,
well, think about Jurassic Park too. Like, they're trying to smuggle the embryos out so they can just sell them to someone else for more money, despite the fact that, like, you're kind of going to know when dinosaurs exist somewhere other than this island where you created dinosaurs, that someone stole your dinosaurs.
Hey, like, where did these come from? Come on now. I mean,
right.
Where should we start our investigation?
Right. Newman.
Exactly.
Newman.
Fucking Newman. See, nobody cares.
Exactly. So my next one is from 2000. This one is sci-fi / I would say horror, crazy monster thing. It's Pitch Black from 2000. The most low budget of any of them that I'm doing. Also, it took 23 million to make, and graphically you wouldn't think that, as far as just the space scene of the ship coming in, crash landing onto this unknown planet, to the alien creatures that only come out at night, that kind of look like alien but not quite look like alien. Like, they can't see if you're standing right in front of them. They have vision on the sides. Just fantastically done for the budget they have, and grew a cult following because of it.
I'm sorry, did you say 23 million?
Yeah, it only took 23 million to make Pitch Black.
What the? How is it?
This was pre Fast and the Furious Vin Diesel, so he was a much cheaper ticket at that time.
Which has a big thing to do with it.
I'm not talking about like the actors. I'm just talking about like sci-fi and stuff like that. That shit costs money, man. Like,
yeah, it's
sets
crazy.
and CGI. It's fucking insane.
So the premise is a fugitive, which is Vin Diesel, is being transferred on a ship to another planet, like a jail planet, and the ship crash lands when everyone's in hypersleep, I guess you could call it, or whatever it is. And so it gets hit by a bunch of not asteroids, but tiny rocks and everything. Like, the pilot is completely just destroyed by all these rocks coming into the ship. And so it crash lands, and obviously Vin Diesel gets out before anyone knows what happened. He escapes. And Vin Diesel is just terrifying in this film. Like, this is the first real look at Vin Diesel as this badass that he becomes in Fast and the Furious and Triple X and all that stuff. Like, he's just phenomenal in this as like almost horror film, like scary kind of guy. During production, the studio actually folded that they were recording it for, and Universal actually came in at the 11th hour and agreed to release it. It was a Hail Mary, and it predated Fast and Furious, but led into that relationship with Vin Diesel and Universal of Fast and the Furious. And without Pitch Black, the Fast and the Furious franchise probably would have died, because he was sitting on the set to do Tokyo Drift, Vin Diesel was, and they leveraged his cameo in Tokyo Drift to be able to continue the Pitch Black, the Riddick series, which there's been 3, and he's wanting to do a 4th. So he was like, all right, I'll continue Fast and the Furious, but I love this series. Like, I love this character Riddick. Like, I want to continue doing this character. So unless you agree to let me continue doing this character, no more me in Fast and the Furious, is basically what he said.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was really cool, that he basically, and it's been the same director the whole time, which I forgot to mention is David Toy, I think his name is. He's from the US. He wrote The Fugitive. And Aaron,
about this,
obviously.
Pauly. I was going to say, this is kind of like Fugitive in Space.
Yeah.
This movie begins.
It was what?
Like The Fugitive in Space. It's the prisoner transport that goes awry and crashes, and it ends up. So it's kind of like, I'm gonna take the first 20% here, and let's just throw it in space with Vin Diesel and aliens, and then we'll pick it up from there.
Well, I was just gonna say The Fugitive, which Aaron was absolutely phenomenal in.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, he knocked it out of the park with that one.
He played Tommy Lee Jones's great grandpa.
Fuck you, Andrew.
Exactly. Like, it was a short scene, but he did it perfectly.
Market, dude.
And then he also wrote Waterworld, which Waterworld, like, is either loved or hated by people, and I absolutely love Waterworld.
I love Waterworld.
I'm not going to get into that one.
Waterworld's fun. It's not great, but it's fun, you know.
Yeah. But as far as Pitch Black goes, like, I love the premise of these creatures only coming out when night falls, and night falls only fall on this planet once every like 16 years or something. And then they're obviously like they're killed by light, and so they find this, they go into this cave to try and escape them, and they see light happening, and it's all these like bugs or slugs or whatever that glow in the dark, so they just start putting them in jars, and like the whole scene of them trying to get to the next ship to get off this planet, and him just leading the way, like Vin Diesel just being the badass that he is, with like one light in front of him, everyone's with the lights in the back, and he's just chugging along with like the whatever it is, like the basically the power to run this ship to get it over there. Like, very suspenseful scene, and then like him deciding to either just leave everyone, or actually, you know, once he gets to the ship, where he's like, all right, do I just fucking take off, or is there a bit human in me where I'm actually going to save some of these people? I thought was, yeah, it was so good. And when I watched it in 2000, I think I was like 13 or something like that. It was great. Like, it was terrifying, but also just, he was so fucking cool. Like, as a 13-year-old, you're like, you scared the shit out of me, but you're a fucking badass. Like, with your glossed over eyes where you can see in the dark and all this shit, like, just insane. And like, I do like the Riddick series itself. I think it could have done better. And I know there's a 4th one that he's been trying to put out for years now, that just, they haven't gotten the right people for. Like, him and the director are still on board. It's just they haven't quite figured it out yet. So I'm really hoping that comes out. But yeah, that one, Pitch Black, is near and dear to me, just because like it's such a low budget film, but does not look low budget at all. And it's just got that cult following, which any movie with cult followings are always normally pretty good.
True.
And
Yeah,
you've got
very true.
And you've got Rip from Yellowstone in it, so it can't be, it's got to be good.
Yeah.
You got a guy in there who's in a show that has mountains and forests and flatlands in it. So it must be good.
Yeah.
Oh, guys,
Hauser's in there, the biggest actor.
There's my mom.
Oh, there she is.
Hey, Gail.
Hi.
And I don't get internet free.
Fake news, Bryce.
I can't
Fake
hear
news.
But she does have incredible ears, apparently, because
Yeah.
she. So you can imagine what growing up was like.
Couldn't get away with nothing.
See ya.
Bye.
This is our first cameo.
Yeah.
She brought me a cookie.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Aaron, is someone
but the biggest actor in
your
there
mom going to
before
come
Vin
down
Diesel.
and bring you applesauce?
Fuck you, Andrew.
We're crushing it today.
Yeah, we're not even through the second one. We already got 4. Oh my god, I love it.
Oh man. But Keith David was in there. I don't know if you guys. I mean, Bryce, you probably know Keith David, Andrew. But he was the Muslim, or I think Muslim preacher guy that was traveling on board, like going to Mecca, like space Mecca.
Oh,
you
yeah.
mean the black actor that's in everything, right?
Yeah.
Keith David, who's just absolutely everything.
He was Daniel Kaluuya and Keke Palmer's father, who dies at the beginning of Nope. That is.
Oh.
Oh, really?
He's had so many prominent roles where he is like, for the longest time, I didn't know his name. Yeah. I was just like, oh my god, it's the guy I've seen in 800 movies.
Yeah, he was an Armageddon.
He always does what he needs to do.
Yeah, he was in the Quick and the
Quick and the Dead.
Quick and the Dead.
Quick and the Dead.
Quick and the Dead. He was in Dead Presidents. He was in The Barbershop. He was in ATL.
I just pulled ATL. I ride or die with ATL. I just pulled up his IMDb, and I think my internet is now going at the same speed as Aaron's because it's so long. So much.
It just keeps going. So yeah, like it was great having him in there too. Like definitely the star of the show, besides biggest star, because Vin Diesel wasn't as big during that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, fantastic movie. So my next one is from 1990. The director is Paul Verhoeven from he's Dutch. He also did RoboCop, Basic Instinct, Showgirls, Starship Troopers, and Hollow Man. And this is Total Recall. Yeah, so I right away, like all-star director that, sci-fi he's perfected. Arnold Schwarzenegger, of course, is the main guy. Sharon Stone is in there, which the Basic Instinct thing works out with that. Rachel Ticotin is Arnold's love interest, Melina. Let's see. I'm trying to see who else is in there.
Michael Ironside, who plays Richter, is like one of those guys whose faces, like I've never known his name before. I just looked it up, but like you always know him as just like he's a bad guy and everything. And
like Michael Morse.
Basically, like you know the face more than you know who actually is.
Well, isn't that the dude who's the blue guy that whistles in the Guardians of the Galaxy?
No. That's wow, I can't believe I can't remember his name. That's not him. No, Michael Morse is he was in The Negotiator. He was like the lead, like cop or whatever that wanted to rush Samuel Jackson in The Negotiator. He was in Long Kiss Goodnight. He was like the main antagonist in that Gina Davis couldn't remember.
Oh yeah. He was in Top Gun.
He was. Yeah. Like you can literally like see him in almost everything. He's one of those B actors that's just like again. Like every year you see him in like 6-7
Michael
movies.
Rooker.
Michael Rooker is who I was thinking of. Yep.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yondu.
Who's also in a ton of shit. I mean, that guy.
Yeah.
Like ever since Cliffhanger, he's been in fucking everything.
But Arnold, this was the same year he did Kindergarten Cop. Those were the two big movies he did in 1990, were Total Recall with the woman with 3 boobs and Kindergarten Cop. So quite the difference there.
Grooming, I call it.
But basically,
he was a Republican, so that makes sense.
That's true. The year is 2084, and man has colonized Mars. Throughout the movie, I wonder if he's still actually in the dream state that he's in, that they put him in this virtual world of Mars, or if he's actually experiencing all this stuff that's happening. Rachel Ticotin, who plays Arnold's love interest, Melina, was probably one of my first crushes when I watched this movie when I was younger. Like, there's some about her. I was just like, I like her a lot. As a kid, didn't know what it was, but it was definitely a crush. So many good scenes in this. One pulling the tracker through his nose when he gets the call being like, there's a tracker, there's only one way you can get it out, and he just puts that thing up his nose and just you see the blowing happen and then pull out. Like for 1990 graphics, like fucking fantastic. So good. Then there's him in the robotic woman suits where she starts freaking out, like it freezes up on him and she just keeps saying 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. Like, how long will you be here? 2 weeks. And then they keep asking your questions. She's just like, 2 weeks. It's just like they ask like, questions it didn't know.
Like so it was like Aaron when we tried to film this episode the first time.
Fuck you, Andrew.
2 weeks.
There it is.
We got a lot of road left, and we're already at 5. We're getting to double digits today. I feel it.
Wait, is the record still 6 or is it
7? I think
it's 6.
7.
Okay. 6.
That was 6. Okay.
Okay, cool. So we're right there.
But yeah, but that's going back to because that had to be some sort of CGI. So you were talking, and I don't mean to interrupt you, Pauly, but like when the lady goes nuts and says 2 weeks, but then when he takes the head off, that had to be CGI, of some sort.
A lot more of that was practical than you may think, and that's why a lot of the movies from the 80s and early 90s look so terrible. Is because they did their best with like the little
what they had,
like the little person who lived. Who's the
in his
he's got
the mind.
Yeah, like there's definitely some moments where you're like, I can tell this movie was made before the CGI really took off. But yeah, it's a joke.
Yeah, it's so good. And then like the ridiculousness of a 1,000,000-year-old reactor that aliens left there, that you just need to put your hands on that in a certain way. I think it was
the Spock wave,
and then boom. Yeah, and then boom, there's oxygen, and
Star Trek.
Everyone can live on Mars. But I remember being terrified when I first watched it as a very young kid, when they got sucked out at the very end and they couldn't breathe and all of a sudden their eyes are
I remember that part.
I was like, oh my God. Like, it's like I had nightmares about that. Where it's just like,
that scene is long too.
Breathe, and that shit's going to happen.
Yeah. That scene just kind of keeps going and you're like, resolution, please.
You're like, is this an irrational fear I'm going to carry with me for the rest of my life?
Yes, it is.
This movie at age 6.
Like in Detroit, every time I drove by like a stack that was steaming, which there are tons over in Allen Park and everything, it's gonna happen. My eyes, I can already feel it. Like,
I've seen Total Recall.
That one's, and I've not seen the new one. Like I kind of refuse to see it. I know it's got some good actors, but I was just like, no.
I'm not bad.
Total Recall.
I tried it, and I don't think I even finished it. It's just like the first,
but it's not like you already have Total Recall that exists,
right?
And when you're watching the new one, you're like, just subconsciously, like, this isn't the same thing.
I know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
right.
And like, it wasn't done bad or shot bad or the sound is good, and it's like a quality well done movie. But like, it's like you kind of just like redid it with Colin Farrell, and it's like, Jesus Christ, of all people.
Yeah, exactly. So next to another, speaking of going back to capitalism, like it's funny in that one where they're like staying at the Mars Hilton and there's like all like the Coca-Cola signs and all that stuff where they've totally just, not only colonized Mars, but they've capitalized Mars. It's like capitalistic everything there.
They have to brand
and the way and then they cut off air to like the lessers of the people is just their way of getting back at him for running off and can't be able to find him. It's just the way of this world is very much in that movie, as with a lot of the movies that we've chosen. The next one from 1993, Marco Brambilla from Italy directed this. The only other major film that he did was Excess Baggage with Guillermo del Toro and Alicia Silverstone. So this was kind of a shocker. I figured someone with more of a repertoire had it, but it's Demolition Man. From 1993, and that one, of course, is Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes. 93 was like the year of action, or the years of action stars. Like those two were two of the tops when it came to action stars. Sandra Bullock's in there as well. Benjamin Bratt.
That would have been after, yes.
In there as one of the guys trying to revolt against what's going on. What's that?
Oh, you froze for a second.
Gotcha. Where did I?
Oh no!
Where did I leave off?
What's happening?
Maybe just start. I'm gonna mark this.
But Bryce is locked up too.
No, I'm not. I'm just sitting really still. Right?
Oh my god!
he's a statue. That's
Am I good now?
There. Yeah, you're good now. Maybe
just,
you're
good.
Maybe just start. Maybe just intro Demolition
do that.
and go from the top.
Okay, I'll start at the beginning. So this next one's from 1993. The director is Marco Brambilla from Italy. Probably just butchered his last name, but the only other major movie he had was Excess Baggage, which had Alicia Silverstone in it, which I also enjoyed because, again, another crush from my younger years. So it was all about that movie. Demolition Man has, of course, Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes, two of the biggest action stars of the 90s for sure. Sandra Bullock's in there, as well as Benjamin Bratt, and Dennis Leary is in there.
Don't forget Rob Schneider.
Black
Come on.
is actually
yeah.
I was. Fuck you, Bryce.
I got one.
Jack Black is actually in this movie as the Wasteland Scrap number 2. Jack Black is in this.
Really?
Jesse Ventura is in this. Jesse Ventura is Cryocon number 6, and Bill Cobbs, which is Zachary Lamb, which is like Sylvester's old buddy from before he was cryo-freezed to come into the future. But basically, it starts out in dystopian LA of 1996. The Hollywood sign is aflame. And Sergeant
right.
John Spartan. Yeah, John Spartan tries to take down Simon Phoenix, which is Wesley Snipes, and a ton of innocents die. And instead of focusing on the innocents, he's so focused on Wesley Snipes' character, Phoenix, that they actually imprison both of them. Once he is captured, they're like, you just let all these innocent people die. You're going to be cryo-freezed. So they go into the future 36 years into 2032, not too far ahead. And Taco Bell is every restaurant that there is. Taco Bell has won the franchise wars. There is no McDonald's, there's no Burger King, there's no Chick-fil-A. Taco Bell is all there is.
That does sound like a very. I would actually like that.
Oh my god! Yeah,
I would not.
Your bowels.
It's like
I like Taco Bell, but like for every meal.
But they have like fine dining Taco Bell. They have fast food Taco Bell. Like there's so many different Taco Bells.
There's
it's great. There's variations to all of it.
Clear your evening. I got us a reservation at Taco Bell for dinner.
When Sandra Bullock gets so happy about it.
I know. She's like, you don't know about Taco Bell? There's the verbal morality statute, which is fantastic because anytime someone cusses, they get the little, what's it called?
Just to take it out of the wall,
fine.
Basically.
Yeah, citation. There you go. Yeah. And so it's great when Wesley Snipes gets it first because he's like, motherfucker. And he does his whole like high pitched thing that he does. And he just like comes out again. And then he ends up just shooting the fucking thing because he's like, no. She's like, shut up. And then Sylvester, because he doesn't know how to use the 3 shells to wipe his ass, like just starts cussing at the thing to get all the citations. And he's like, I'll be right back. I'm going to the restroom. Like, it's just. Like there's so much humor in this, and like I said, like prior to starting this, like I love the ones that incorporate humor and sci-fi probably the most out of any kind of sci-fi films there are. It's kind of nonsensical, like brainless, like you don't have to think about it, but at the same time, like makes you think, like what if the future was actually like this? So yeah, and then there's a lot of talk from Sandra Bullock about how insecure heterosexual males conversed when they're talking back and forth and cussing and all that stuff, which I found hilarious. And the oldies channel, which is beautiful, is just old commercial jingles. So like they're like, hey, you'll know these ones, and it's just like they're singing the Oscar Mayer song and like all this stuff and like singing them like they're actual tunes, but it's all commercial jingles.
Benjamin Bratt, right?
30 seconds long. It just yeah, Benjamin Bratt and her are just singing it back and forth while Sylvester's in the back, just like, what the fuck am I doing here? But yeah, and Dennis Leary's character, he is basically trying to revolt against what is, this new LA that you basically can't do anything. Which, yeah, I mean, I would be right there with him probably if it ended up being the way it is in the future. And it's like, nope, I can't stand this.
Didn't they call it like, wasn't it San Angelo? Didn't like San Francisco or something?
It was San Angeles,
and
San Diego,
Los
and
Angeles.
Los Angeles or something like that. Yep.
Again, the
capitalism, yeah.
the capitalism element is like a through line in all of these movies.
Like all through there. And basically, so what happened was Wesley Snipes was brought back to basically kill this guru that is the head of both, like the entire city. And when he's brought back, he's given like every tool possible. Like he's got all like gun skills, martial arts skills, like any kind of combat skills. He has now got them. They were able to implant them into his head. So Sylvester has to be Sylvester and try to take out Wesley.
Real quick, Pauly.
Just so I don't throw any spoilers.
He was brought back to kill Edward Friendly.
Yeah.
He was brought back by the mayor to kill Edgar Friendly. Yeah, cool.
Dennis Leary's.
That's what it was. Yeah. Like so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he was getting a little too close to actually getting people to revolt. But yeah, just a fantastic, fun, action packed. There's gunfights, there's martial arts fights, there's just anything and everything in there.
That great chase scene, but when they take the Charger up from the below grounds.
It was a GTO.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Drop down. Okay, sorry, GTO.
Busted.
Yeah.
Whatever, man.
But to get Stallone and Wesley Snipes at that point, like they are both on fire.
Yeah,
so that was like pretty wild.
It's just crazy that they were able to get those two. But my last one, which is probably the one I like the most and the one with the most background of like how the hell did they get this to happen, is directed by one of my favorite people, who was born in Medicine Lake, Minnesota, Terry Gilliam from Monty Python fame. He did Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, and of course, animation director of Monty Python and the Holy Grail, The Meaning of Life, co-wrote almost all of Monty Python. Just an absolute amazing person. 12 Monkeys, 1995. Bruce Willis is a convict in 2035 that gets sent back in time to get information on a man-made virus that wiped out most of the population. The timing isn't quite precise, though, and sometimes he gets thrown back to a time he's not supposed to, like 1917 in the middle of World War I, in the middle of a bunker, where he's there with one of his cohorts, and all of a sudden they're seen in like pictures as well, from World War I. But he finally gets sent back to close enough to the right time and gets put into a psych ward because he sounds insane with what he's trying to accomplish. Coming from the future, looking for who started this man-made virus to try and fix it so everything goes back to normal. It's the visuals and cinematography are quintessential Terry Gilliam. Like he's phenomenal as a director. And the composition of the music, like it's that frantic, up and down, like I forget the name of the composer, but like you hear it and you're just like, this is 12 Monkeys. Like you just know this music, like the frantic violins and just the percussions and everything. It just fits the movie so perfectly. And so one of the fun facts that we took to this is Bruce Willis actually took a pay cut and actually did not get paid until the movie was already released. He basically did this whole movie for free. And took the pay cut because of Terry Gilliam. And Brad Pitt wasn't actually like big yet. Like this was before Interview with the Vampire. This was before a lot of those. So Brad Pitt, they got for a steal as well. And Brad's, Brad was just phenomenal in this, and in the psych ward, like going crazy. Like, and the way that they got Brad to act the way he did, Terry actually took his cigarettes away from him to make him just be this frantic little like psychotic person that he was in there. So yeah, like that was all like, he took away his nicotine and was just like, here you go. Like you're going to get this done.
Tools of the trade.
That's
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Be like, I'm taking away your vice right now. You're going to do what I need you to do. But there were so many ups and downs. Like this is another one that almost didn't get fully made because of budgets and everything like that. Just couldn't get it done for the right production studio. And I forget, there's so many great actors. Madeline Stowe plays Catherine. There's Christopher Plummer, which is another great one. But really, like most of the cast and crew all took pay cuts to work on this film because of Terry, because of the reputation he has. So like if it wasn't for them all taking pay cuts and, you know, doing this for less than their worth, like this movie probably would have never been made. And I just love that, you know, when they all get behind it for the art of it versus the money of it, like it makes for such a great film. But yeah, I mean, it's not your stereotypical sci-fi. Like there's not, you know, space stuff. There's not, you know, I mean, there is a mind trip with what Bruce Willis is going through, but most of the movie is set in like one certain time. It's just the fact that he got there from the past or from the future is what makes it sci-fi. But yeah, it's always one that's just been a great movie to me. I know they came out with a TV series, another thing that I refuse to watch, where I was just like, nope, there's 112 Monkeys.
No,
that is this movie, and I'm not going anywhere near any of that television show. So
many of those series that are
is,
made now,
like five.
Sorry, so many of those movies that are made now that have the TV shows later, like what, 25, 28 years later. I mean, I think that's why they do it, because they're like, oh, nobody's seen that original shit. Let's just make this now.
Right. Yeah.
Because we're not going to watch it.
Many of us that are still alive. Yeah. What's going on, Aaron? You all right?
I'm good.
Okay. But yeah, those were my five. There were definitely some that, you know, like Andrew said, that we had multiples that we had to kind of pick and choose. But those five right there are all movies that I can go back to and watch at any point, which is kind of why I picked them. They're all great films for one reason or another. And yeah, like that's my five sci-fis.
Nice. Good list.
Beautiful. Yeah. So what we're going to do now is we're going to conclude. This will be part one. And then part two is going to feature Bryce and Aaron. So before we end here, obviously, we want to thank our sponsor, R.T. Slaywood. The novel is The Ballad of Bonaduke. It is exclusively found on Kindle Vella. It's still in our link tree. I believe he shared with us that he saw himself shoot up the Kindle Vella rankings, I believe it was, just based on some additional traction. So we're hoping some of that had to do with the podcast, and super excited that he was seeing that. So anyone that's watching who hasn't checked that out yet, go take a look. I really enjoyed what I read so far.
Yeah, if you're into sci-fi, especially.
Shoot him up. Yeah, I mean it's the perfect time to talk about it as well as we're doing our sci-fi movies. Might as well talk about his novel there as well. So.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, I think there's a very fitting way that we've determined is how we need to end the episode off. So before we can roll the theme music, we need something from our old friend Aaron.
Well, as always, fuck you, Andrew.